Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor with Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Taylor Ragland, who does sports for Plano, Allen, and Lake Cities, as well as Brian Murphy, sports editor for the Frisco Enterprise, Little Elm Journal, Salina Record. And gentlemen, let's talk about District 96A. So this is again, this is kind of separate from our question series, but this is going to kind of revolve around a question as we kind of continue to just find different angles to preview the upcoming school year, and just kind of taking a look at District 96A in particular for this one. For those who don't know, that is what is going to be the Plano ISD, Allen, McKinney ISD, Prosper Jesuit District. The question is simple. Who are the most intriguing teams in District 96A in 2018-19? Now, intrigue, that can cross a bunch of different ways. You can define intrigue, whether it's, you're intrigued by a team like, y'all two, for example. There's a lot of teams in this district that y'all just haven't seen yet. Brian, you cover, Prosper. They're going to be in a brand new district. There's going to be seven schools that you've never covered a game of before. Taylor, you've only been here for the last half of the 17-18 school years. So things like volleyball and football are going to be completely brand new to you this fall. It could be that. It could be a school that graduated a massive senior class. It could be a school that just had a team that just had a major player transfer in. There's plenty of ways to define intrigue. So if we just simply step back and just take a look at all of these teams that we're going to be covering for the upcoming school year, which ones intrigue us the most? So what the exercise was is we all came up with a list of two teams per person, plus Kendrick Johnson. Kendrick's out and about doing his UFC thing out in Las Vegas this week, so he sent along his answers for this, and we will surely work those in. But all of us have come up with two teams. We'll talk about four for the first part of the podcast, four on the back end. So let's just start Taylor, wherever you want to begin. Who is one of the most intriguing teams in 96A?
Well, I guess if you rank my two, this would be the more intriguing of the two.
Power ranking ours? 1 and 2?
Yeah, 1 and 2. Number one ranking would be West softball.
Okay.
Because this season, I think that there was potential there. I think they were a young team, and I don't know if they were expected to necessarily, make any noise in the playoffs. Or, if you ask them, they always think that they're capable of doing that.
Sure.
But I think they were kind of robbed of this season a little bit, just by the way things happened with superstar Tatum Boyd. Missed the majority of district play, or missed enough of district play to where when she returned, it was meaningless. There was really nothing that she could have done to kind of get them back in the playoffs. But I think going into next season, they have a huge will-be juniors class, huge class of rising juniors that was forced to play a lot last year just by necessity of being a young team. Had a lot of starters that were sophomores, a lot of girls that saw time that were sophomores that will hopefully for them step into some more important roles and have a little bit more maturity at the varsity level. And then you get Boyd back, and you get Elisa Rosado back, who they will both be coming back for their 4th year of varsity softball, played all 3 years so far at West. And Boyd is just kind of an all-district, all-state, potentially talent on the mound. She ran out against McKinney in the first game of district play last season and threw a no-hitter. And then everything kind of went downhill in the next game when she broke her finger against Allen and was essentially robbed of her junior season. So I think West softball for me is really intriguing in that I think they can go from a team that missed out on the playoffs and had a very down season to a team that should be in the playoffs, I think, and could potentially make some noise, because as we've all seen with softball, if you have somebody in the circle as dominant as Tatum Boyd has the potential to be, now especially as a senior and having 3 full years of growth at the varsity level, maybe not full years counting last year, but 3 years of maturity and being around the program and really stepping into a leadership role. And then you added in Rosado as kind of also part of that leadership core. I think that there's a lot of potential there, and I think my definition of intrigue is just it's very unknown, but it seems like they're primed and have the potential to have a pretty good special year.
Because that was such a jarring year for them, considering what they had accomplished the year before, going to the regional finals, and obviously they graduated a lot of these seniors who were really chipped in for that 5-round playoff run, and then just to have so much was placed on the shoulders from a leadership standpoint of both Boyd and Rosado, and then to lose one of those two cornerstones, and in a district like 6A, which was was about as unforgiving as
it was just
as
over.
you could find. Yeah,
it was just over. It was you lose her out of the circle, you lose her out of the lineup, and when she came back, she wasn't even 100%. I mean, she was pitching, but she couldn't throw all of her pitches. She couldn't hit, so it wasn't even like they got the player back for the amount of time that she was there. So it was just a kind of a lost season, really. And I think that's kind of the attitude heading into next year for West is just what happened. And it was a down year, but we're going to use that to kind of move forward and kind of write it off as an anomaly instead of, a trend downward. They don't believe that this was the start of bad years. They believe this was a little blip on the radar of their typical string of good seasons.
Because even once she came back, though, you saw kind of the impact that it immediately had. I'm just looking back through the schedule, and there was a run there where they were obviously playing catch up and outside the playoff picture, from the moment she went out. But there was a second there where they were able to kind of make things interesting for a couple weeks. They beat two teams that wound up going to the playoffs.
Tried to play a little spoiler every once in a while.
Including Wiley and Allen. So you saw that potential really kind of start to come into form later in the season. So it's definitely a very solid selection as far as intrigue goes. I'm actually for one of mine. I'm leaning softball as well, except in a different same city, except the opposite end of the city. I'm and I will say as a disclaimer, because this wasn't my beat, I did not get to cover a single game for Plano East softball this past season, but I know at least relative to expectations that we had going into the year, it's just so tough to kind of think like where things kind of turn for this Plano East softball team, because everything on paper lined up perfectly for them. You talk about just thinking back to what they accomplished in 2017, Cindy Mosteller's first year with the program, and they just they almost, it was almost a surprise just how just vastly improved they were immediately, and then they go 4 rounds deep. They're them Plano West, Plano were jockeying back and forth for the district title all year, and then you go 4 rounds deep. You take Keller, freaking Keller of all teams,
and you get pieces back.
Yeah, the eventual state champion to 3 games. You look, just about as promising a note as you could have expected in that first year, and then thought of heading into 2018 as one of the top programs in the area, and a team that you said they lost just 1 starter. It was right there, and then they started off all right in district, and then just somewhere over the back half, things just kind of went south, just especially on the defensive.
Injuries hit them as well with Gabby Lopez continued to play throughout district and continued to hit and could play in the field a little bit and all that good stuff, but could not pitch at least effectively for most of the back half of district, which is a big part of what happened. But you still have Carson Armijo.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's just one of those situations where still, you look at West when Boyd goes down, it's like, well, where do we go? We don't have someone that just fills in. But with Lopez out, you still have UCLA commit Carson Armijo, and you still figured that with Lopez still being able to hit and provide kind of some pop in the middle of the order, that they still should have at least made the playoffs, and it was just pretty shocking.
Because the crux of it is like just who is the real Plano East softball team? If you look at, is it the team that went to the regional semifinals in 2017, or the team that was eliminated on the last night of the regular season from the playoffs? They didn't even make the playoffs altogether in 2018 because they still, they graduated some players from that regional semifinals team. At least the ones that played in 17 and then were part of the team in 18, but they still have a few left over who were part of that run back in 2017, like you mentioned, Armijo, who was the district's newcomer of the year as only a freshman. But then you have players like Ronnie Ramos, Ashley Dart, Jordan Manwarren. These are players who have extensive playoff experience. So I was just very, very surprised that East incurred the year that they did.
So what kept them out of the playoffs?
Defense.
Tough
defense was the district was tough, but also the defense. I crunched I went through. They allowed only 4.2 runs the first 5 games of district, and then 7.5 the last 9. Plano Senior and Allen specifically just had their way.
Well, there were a lot of games too, which I may talk about in the varsities as a game I covered. I think they lost 16-12 to Plano the first time they played in district, and those are games where East had the offense. They were scoring upwards of 7, 8, 9, 10 runs. A lot. I don't have the exact stats, on me, but their offense was certainly not the issue. They just night in and night out, they could not play defense. And every time I talked to most stellar. That's exactly what she said after the game. She was like, it comes down to, again, we're giving away, and she has a phrase she likes to say, we're giving away 60 feet. We're giving away free bases. And every night when I would go cover them, afterward, that would be either my first question or her opening statement.
Yeah.
It was another night where we gave away too many free bases. We gave away too many 60 feet. And that's a tough way to win softball games, especially in a district with Geyer, Wiley, Plano, like 6A was, just really top heavy.
So I'm just intrigued just to see what this team winds up being, because like I said, there's still talent that's going to be there next season. But and then the thing about East and West for that matter is that the landscape is kind of changed for the softball district, because
you drop Geyer and Wiley.
Yeah, two teams that made the playoffs last year, so you're going to have two brand new playoff spots that are right there for the taking. But by that same accord, you have a team like Prosper, which is going to slide right in, and I mean that team that won their district and is totally capable of competing amongst the the elites in 9-6A. So it's just two very I don't know. I can't think of the last time, if there's ever been a time, at least covering Plano ISD or Allen, where you had a team that made a substantial playoff run, brought back as much experience as East did, and then just flat out missed the playoffs.
Well, and it'll be interesting too next year, because for as much as they brought back this year, they're losing more pieces next year. They're losing Ashley Jensen behind the plate, which is a huge kind of leadership role, and then obviously just a big position defensively. They're losing Bella Kineska from second, kind of a top of the order slot. I mean, they're losing Gabby Lopez.
I'm looking right there. I mean, the lineup on the last game that they played against Plano, they're going to graduate. Their leadoff, cleanup, and then their four-hole hitter. I mean, that's three of. I mean, those are three
Amy
of
Jensen, not Ashley Jensen. I was thinking of Ashley Dart.
But those are, three of the most important spots in your lineup. So they are going to have to. I mean, it's going to be a revamped lineup next year. But again, there is still, they still do have 6 starters back from, from late in the season, plus 4 who were a part of that playoff run back in 2017 and started for that team. So there's, I don't know. I'm just anxious to see what kind of bounce back they have in store, because it just seems so weird to think that a team could have 2 completely contrasting seasons like they just did. Brian, what is
Hey guys.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Brian.
What is one of the intriguing teams on your radar for this coming year?
I'm going to go with a Prosper team, so I'll go with Prosper girls basketball.
Okay.
14-0 in district play last year, top 5 team in the entire state in 5A. They have one of the best players in the country in Jordan Oliver. She played with the U17 women's basketball team. Last year. She's ranked 98, or she has a 98 ranking according to ESPN. She's a 5-star recruit going to Baylor. She comes back for senior year. She was the MVP of the district last year. She loses her star point guard in Mackenzie Hewitt, who's going to Yale. Really smart girl. She's going to play basketball at Yale. So they lose a big player there, but they return the rest of their roster. 14-0. They took Lone Star the distance in the playoffs last year, 46-42. Should be interesting with Plano, Allen, 2 teams, 2 powerhouse teams in 6A, and they're in the same freaking district, and they're not going to be Prosper last year was playing the Carrollton schools, the Creek Views, the Newman Smiths, the McKinney Norths, the Lake Dallases, the teams that that struggled in girls basketball. They're not going to get that night in and night out in 9-6A. 6A last year. They're going to have much tougher competition night in and night out. They're not going to be able to take a game off in the middle of the week like they maybe were last year. They won't admit it, but it was the truth in District 14 5A. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see, how they fare making that leap to 6A.
Right. Because that is one of those, I wonder how many times just throughout Jordan Oliver's high school career that she has shared the floor with a player who is comparable to her from a skill standpoint.
Now, we were talking about it, last week or a couple weeks ago. She won't be the best player in this district, right? Because
she could be. But there's because I actually have an entry that I'll get to later on for 9-6A girls basketball. But just as a brief aside, between when you look at some of the prospects in this district, you have Jordan Oliver, and Prosper. You have Jaden Owens at Plano West. You have Nyah Green now having transferred back to Allen, and that's not even mentioning the 6-6A MVP last year, Tavi Diggs at Plano East. And then you have Jordan Merritt with Plano Senior. Let's see. According to those, you just mentioned that 98 overall grade for Jordan Oliver. Between Nyah Green, Jordan Oliver, and Jaden Owens, all of them are ranked top 16 in the nation by ESPN for the class of 2019.
And they're in the same district.
And you have Jordan Merritt, who's number 6 for the class of 2020. And that's just, again, in one district, you're going to have that kind of star power.
See, Jordan Oliver, she would score, 25, 30 points, and it was effortless. And, it was kind of like, all right, she's just bigger, faster, stronger than a lot of these girls in 5A.
Yeah.
Now going to 6A, she's going to be able to get those easy transition buckets because, it's no knock on her game. She has a great half-court game, great mid-range jumper. She's a good offensive rebound, but a lot of her points came in transition. Steal the ball, mid-court, something, they're gone. Mackenzie Hewitt, great point guard, we'll find her in transition, in the half-court, what have you, and she was getting easy buckets left and right, easy layups. I don't think it's going to be that easy for her this time around, for her senior season.
That'll be, 9-6A girls basketball in general is going to be, there might not be as, pound for pound, a sport might not have as much star power in that district as 9-6A girls basketball.
And Prosper, they played Allen, they played McKinney, and they played Geyer last year. Beat Geyer by 25. Not sure how good Geyer girls basketball was last year, but they beat McKinney by 7, and they lost to Allen in November. So really early in the season, maybe not look too much into those games, but Allen beat them by 16 on November 17th. So they had played, and they beat Saxe the next day. A team that also made it to the state tournament in girls basketball. They beat them by double digits. So Prosper can I think they can hang, with the big dogs in 6A.
I think that's a trend probably. Just you could have picked any Prosper team moving over, and that's intriguing because they've just been so dominant at the 5A level, and they're so clearly ready to move up and to compete at 6A. I think you could have chosen any Prosper team moving into 9-6A. Will be intriguing to see where they slide in because they've just been so good.
Let's pull an entry from Kendrick's selections for what something at McKinney weighs as far as what is kind of piquing his interest for the coming year. One of Kendrick's selections was I'm going to shift gears to the football field. McKinney High. Obviously McKinney High was one of the better stories last year just in DFW football in general. A program that's fallen on some tough times in recent years and was able to ride the momentum of a real tightly knit senior class, and they wound up going 7-4 last season. They made the playoffs for the first time since 2009. That was their first 7-win season in the best I can tell you there is a long time. But now a lot's changed since then. New head coach, their old head coach Jeff Smith is now the assistant AD over at Prosper. They've since brought in Lubbock Estacado's Marcus Shavers, and he's got a fairly brand new team to work with. And I mean, at least on one side of the ball, completely brand new, as in like McKinney doesn't have a single returning starter back on offense. So that alone right there is going to spell intrigue just as far as how you just build off of just what because this offense was one of the top pound for pound rushing offenses in the state for that matter. When you have a bell cow who ends up rushing for setting a state record like Matt Gaddick was able to do with 599 yards. I mean, McKinney's run game was that thing got statewide national exposure because of what he was able to do. Obviously he's graduated. They've lost obviously every other player within that offense. But they do, they will look to, try to regroup under the wing of Cordrick Dunn, who's projected to be the new feature back. He got some time last year as I believe I can't remember if he's going to be a junior or a senior this coming season, but he nevertheless got some reps last year. He actually did start a game during non-district against Midlothian and actually showed really well. He ran for 340 yards. So he's shown at least in the time that he was given that when pressed with a much higher workload that he is capable of showing out. And it's Midlothian is no slouch either, but nevertheless, obviously it's one thing to do it for one game. How does it look over the course of an entire season when you have opposing defenses? When you are firmly on an opposing defense's scouting report and whatnot, it's a completely
and just
different
more carries too,
yeah, for sure.
And the toll it takes on your body and how you run week to week as well. I mean, it's one thing to have one stellar start and know, okay, now I can sit back and assume my backup role again, but to say I'm the guy that's going to get the ball 20 times a game every game now.
Yeah. And you'll be running behind a brand new offensive line too, and that obviously that's not breaking any news to say that matters a ton. And then they're going to be breaking in brand new offensive and defensive systems. The defense, what Cordrick Dunn is to the offense, a guy like Andrew Pitts is to the defense, one of the top defensive backs in the area, just an absolute ball hawk at the cornerback spot. So there's plenty of reason to be intrigued by what McKinney has to offer, especially after a year like they had in 2017.
And you you'd think it'd get maybe a little easier losing Denton Guyer and Wiley. Denton Guyer, looking on the schedule, they beat them
It did
pretty
not
good.
get easier, actually.
Exactly.
Quite to the contrary.
That's what I was alluding to. The Jesuit and Prosper comes in, two teams that are predicted by many to make the playoffs in 9-6A. So it gets a lot tougher, actually, for the Lions next year.
It could be, it could be a year of, kind of a transition year, so to speak,
Right.
kind of because obviously what McKinney was able to accomplish, last season wasn't something that just happened overnight. Again, that senior core had been together for a long time and had kind of been building up to that moment. And, great on them that they were able to follow through and snap that playoff drought. But it just shows that these things take time, so that just needs to be, kept in perspective as well. So, that's I guess the first half of a few of our most intriguing teams to watch in District 9-6A. We got a few more for you, and we will pick that up on the back end of this break after a word from the sponsor. Today's Student Athlete Spotlight is brought to you by Bavarian Grill, authentic Bavarian food and beer garden. Listed by the Zagat survey as the highest rated German restaurant in Texas for 12 years in a row. 12 years! That's 3 presidential terms. You can enjoy traditional and authentic spring favorites now. Everything from appetizers like slow roasted ham hock and potato pancakes to entrees like bratwurst or breaded schnitzel. Bring your whole family for lunch and dinner. They are open Tuesday through Saturday, located off Parker and Highway 75 in Plano. Bavarian Grill. And now, let's get back to the podcast. And let's pick this up with a look at a few more intriguing teams in 9-6A. Just a few teams that, for however we want to define intrigue, just a few teams that are just on our radar for that reason for this coming school year. Let's start right back in the same order that we went. Taylor, what you got? How are you going to round out your list of most intriguing teams in 9-6A?
Well, like you, in your first round, I'm going to head over to Plano East, and I'm going to take Plano East football as my second intriguing team. Not only because I haven't covered this district yet, didn't cover 6-6A and largely the same in 9-6A, but I haven't covered a football season here yet. So just for that factor, I'm intrigued to watch some high school football and see it from that side. But I think Plano East, a team that went, I believe, 3-7 last season, missed out on the playoffs. By all accounts, really should be in this season, I think. I mean, if you take a look at their lineup, they have Brandon Mallory coming back. Their receiving core is intact, and they have some tremendous playmakers. You look at Jalen Anderson, Josh Allison, there's a lot of guys, especially Jalen Anderson, that can go up and get it and are just a threat to basically, anytime you get the ball within a couple yards of wherever they are on the field, they're going to come down with it, 9% of the time, just because they're so athletic, especially Jalen Anderson. Mallory is a constant at quarterback, has been there a while now and understands the system. Played really well this summer in 7-on-7 by all accounts, calling plays, very mature. Same thing with the receiving core. And in state, they went 3-0 in pool play at 7-on-7 state, advanced 2 rounds into the state championship bracket, so definitely a confidence builder. And that's the one thing that when you talk to any of the coaches over there, whether it's Brad Bailey, Joey McCullough, anybody over there, it's these kids are far more confident than a team that went 3-7 last year. And for the seniors this season that were juniors last year, they had a lot of success as sophomores, and they feel like they came into last year kind of taking things for granted and just expecting to kind of cruise back into the playoffs, and they got hit in the mouth a little bit. That's how Bailey described it to me. They were like, I think this senior class really got punched in the mouth and got knocked down and was surprised by the result, but basically it's not going to happen again. They're confident. They are feeling good about where they're at. Their offense should be, I think they led 6-6A in passing last year, just because of the injuries they had at running back and the game plan they kind of had to go into. But I wouldn't be surprised to see them do the same this year, just with the weapons they have. And then they kind of renewed a commitment to defense this spring because, their defense was poor last season, to say the least. So they really kind of buckled down, and Coach McCullough talked to me a lot about how that was kind of their focus. They know the offense is going to be there at this point. They have guys that are pretty proven on the offensive side of the ball, but they need guys like Tyler Owens on defense and Zach Wachuku and some other guys they're going to be those defensive leaders to make that defensive unit kind of match the offense. And I think that as far as intriguing teams and teams that are capable of bouncing back, they're a big one for me. I see them being on the bubble of the playoffs and probably getting in if everything kind of comes together the way they feel like it will.
Because that was a team, like, I think we've mentioned, we've referenced last year's Plano East team quite a bit on this podcast, but it was a team that really was like, I remember just week 2 being out there at shooting photos from the sidelines down at the Cotton Bowl and just watching them just run roughshod over Jesuit, a really good Jesuit team, and just thinking like that was the man, if this is the template for Plano East this year, then they should be in really good shape. And then just the bad luck that they had with injuries and how they were never able to fully recapture that form. And it's just tough in hindsight, but they'll get a chance now to, the identity won't so much as be the running game as it will the passing game because of how much they have back. And they have, for folks who were in College Station over the weekend, you got to see some glimpses of what Plano East had working there with 7-on-7 and just how dynamic that passing offense can be. So, I'm in concert with you there. I'm anxious to see how Plano East fares this coming season.
Now, if they're going to make the playoffs, they have to beat out 2 of the new teams, newcomers, and a rival just from down the street in Plano.
Right.
So, can they be
tough?
Who are they going to beat out?
That's what I think. I when I go through 9-6A in my head, I kind of have them in the 4-5, right in kind of a bubble with, how does Jesuit do moving over? It's a good football program, but how do they adapt? How does Prosper come up and adapt? It's kind of that group of like really fluid. Who knows where they're going to, shake out and finish up completely. It could be Prosper and Jesuit that, come over and they're fine and they're good programs and let's just make playoffs. It's not a big deal. Or it could be, maybe Prosper is the team that gets hit in the mouth just a little bit, just kind of moving up and dealing with 6A talent. Who knows? But I definitely have them kind of in that fluid group that also I think includes Plano. I don't think Plano. I think the only sure thing is Allen, and beyond that, it could be anybody.
I wouldn't be surprised if Prosper kind of gets shocked a little bit, like you said, knocked in the mouth, by some teams, like a McKinney Boyd or Plano East or Plano, get a reality check, next thing you know, they're kind of slipped to the sixth seed in the 9-6A, and they're like, whoa, this is somewhere we haven't been before.
Right.
But they're coming off a season, where the Eagles went 3 rounds deep in the playoffs for the first time since 2012. They beat the brakes out of Wakeland, and then they beat Mesquite Poteet, a team that has had success in football over the last few years, and they beat them pretty handily as well. Ran into a Lake Ridge team who's also now in 6A. So it's like really tough draw there in the 3rd round.
I think there's a big group in 9-6A.
So there's they have confidence to build off of something. They returned their quarterback in Keegan Shoemaker, who struggled at the beginning of the year last year. He actually lost his starting job midway point of the season, regained it back, and played really well. Really lights out, was the quarterback in those playoff games. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Prosper finishes as low as 6th, but I won't be surprised if they finish maybe as high as 2 or 3 in this district.
This is a good segue because I believe Prosper was your other.
By the way, that's my other intriguing team. I decided to stick with the Prosper team. It's the only team I've extensively covered in this district, in all of 6A. Really, this will be my first time covering 6A on the reg, so it should be fun.
One thing with we can stick with Prosper, and I just trying to kind of gauge how Prosper will translate to 6A. I've always kind of used McKinney and Wiley as kind of a template because those 2 programs just a couple years ago they were the ones making the jump to back to 6A and whatnot. And I think that Prosper is, at least from a results standpoint, at least in a much better spot than either of those programs were. And I think that Wiley and McKinney both showed that they they could hold their own, that they weren't so overwhelmed by that by making that transition. Wiley made the playoffs, hit their first year in the district, and then McKinney made the playoffs last season. So there is at least some sort of a recent track record to suggest that Prosper should be all right. I think, as I've already alluded to way back when, at some point, I believe they lost a lot of kids, though, from at least like 14 or 15 kids that made the all-district list out of 14 5A. So they did graduate a pretty talented senior class. So that'll be worth noting too.
They only have 3 returners, starting players on defense coming back. So that'll be tough when you're going against powerhouse offenses in elite district.
I wonder how their district schedule shakes out as I try to what order they see these teams in.
Right. I just think 9-6A in general is going to be an interesting district below Allen, because even you talk to the head coaches in 9-6A, it's okay. Well, Allen is going to win the district, and then we're all kind of vying for 2, 3, 4 to get in the playoffs. And I think you could make an argument that the group of teams that could find itself in that 2, 3, 4 range is as big as any district, around. I mean, any district in the state. Like, there's no clear-cut pecking order. Okay, we'll pencil in, Allen, Plano. Like, there's no easy way of doing that. So I think it's a good environment for teams, or a team like Prosper making the jump when there's less certainty. And you could easily, like you said, end up as high as 2 or 3 if things kind of break the right way.
You know what? That first district game, September 21st, at home against McKinney, it'll kind of be like, a filling out game, to see where they really gauge. Yeah. If they struggle in that game and they lose to McKinney, this might be a long fall and winter for the Eagles on the gridiron. But if they win that game, then they have Plano East and Jesuit. Yeah. 2 teams that should be in the playoff
for sure.
Mix, so. And if they're on a 2-game win streak, 2-0 in the district going into that game against Jesuit, that could be a game for second place right there in 9-6A. So those first 3 games will tell. Actually, the first game alone will tell a lot for the coming season.
Just for momentum's sake, because that's where the season will. Granted, they are playing a 6A. They are playing a 6A non-district schedule, but I do think that the difficulty is really going to ratchet up that game against Plano East. So I do think they'll need to go into that game with as much confidence and momentum as possible, because it isn't just East Jesuit, but you also get they're going to be at McKinney McKinney ISD Stadium, I should say, against Boyd, another team that should be dramatically improved from last season. So I think that first game will be very telling for Prosper.
And they play at Allen, second to last game of the season. I don't know if they'll be phased at all by the stadium, but their 2 playoff wins came at Allen Stadium last year. Granted, they weren't playing against Allen, but
it's probably good.
And the stadium probably didn't have almost 18,000 people in it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's probably ideal for when you have to go play Allen, though. At least you've already gone through the majority of your schedule and kind of have acclimated to 6A at least. I don't think there's any acclimating to the environment that is walking into Eagle Stadium when you're playing Allen, but at least it's not, all right, welcome to 9-6A, your first game is at Allen.
That would be brutal. That would be awful. You just get thrown right into the fire.
Let's see, then let me shift gears to my other selection. I rolled with Allen girls basketball. Speaking of Allen girls basketball is, at least in my humble opinion, a very compelling team next season. Last year with this Allen team, in a week's span, they basically had their best playoff run ever. They matched their, they got to the 3rd round, the regional quarterfinals for the first time since 1995. That is also the last time in which they won a playoff game. So, last year was just a...
Sounds like Allen softball.
Just a great year on all fronts for Allen girls basketball, relative to their to their history. And now you look at what's happened since then, and word came down, reported over the I believe I forget what month, a couple months ago, but that Nyah Green, who was began her high school career at Allen, transferred to Bishop Lynch, and played 2 years there with the Lady Friars. She is transferring back to Allen reportedly for her senior season, and that's a potential game changer in the district, because we just earlier on we were talking about just the the ridiculous star power that this district has and all the talent, and Nyah Green has a chance to be right there among the the absolute best in the district as far as potential district MVP candidates go. I got to by virtue of covering Prestonwood Christian, I got to see a couple of her games at Bishop Lynch, just to see how her game has kind of evolved. And the big thing that sticks out about Nyah Green and how she can impact things is she's 6'1", and she's a terrific floor general. She's a really smooth passer, and for folks who covered, or at least watched the 6A girls basketball district last year, you saw a team like Plano Senior and how much of an advantage it can be when your taller players are also really good passers, and just the extra, just the different kinds of passing angles that it creates being a taller player.
What's her primary position?
She's a guard, but she says that she's 6'1", so at the high school level you can use her just about anywhere. That's the thing, which you get a lot of line of flexibility with her as well, because not only can she pass the ball really well, she's got really solid handles, she's got a steady mid-range game. Even against one of the games against Prestonwood that I saw last year, she had, I want to say it was like 5 threes in the first half, which is obviously an anomaly for any high school player, but still showing that she has at least developed enough comfort in her three-point shot where she's not afraid to let it rip. She's just a high IQ player in general, and the kind of player that could really help kind of maybe take that Allen team to that that next level this coming year. I mean, they've got some solid players beyond just Nyah Green. Zoe McCrary is one of the top emerging posts in the area. Plus, they got players that saw significant rotation minutes like Tyler Jackson, Asia Robertson, Amy Taylor gave them some solid minutes off the bench. It's a team that could definitely make some noise, especially when you look at a team like Plano, which graduated so many seniors from last season. It's only expected that they'll take at least a little bit of a step back. Plus, as we mentioned, I mean, there's going to be a lot of star power in this district. So certainly the competitive juices are going to be flowing. And I expect this Allen team to have to keep the thing rolling under Teresa Durham and just submit another solid season.
So you're saying state championship?
Pretty much, yeah. That seems like a fair expectation.
You don't even have to win the district as an Allen basketball team to go on and win state.
Exactly. There's precedent.
So there you go.
So, if you can't tell between Lisa, you and me, Brian, I mean, the girls basketball in 9-6A ought to be
it's going to be fun.
It ought to be a fun one. So let's see. Let's round this out with a look at Kendrick's other submission. He rolled with McKinney Boyd volleyball. Boyd volleyball, is one of the more storied programs in McKinney ISD athletics from a sheer consistency standpoint. Last season, though, the depth of District 6-6A got the better of the Lady Broncos. They missed the playoffs for the first time in 9 seasons, and it was in the first year under new head coach J.J. Castillo. The volleyball in 6-6A volleyball last year was just, you could kind of tell early on it was going to be brutal. You're going to have some playoff caliber teams that got left out. It was a district that had 6-7 teams that were all capable of potentially winning a playoff series or a playoff match, I should say. But obviously you can only submit 4. Boyd, Plano East, a couple of the notable ones that wound up on the outside looking in. Boyd does, though, they do have 8 seniors coming back, all which played significant minutes in the rotation last year. But it's not a team that has a ton of I don't believe any of them have playoff experience for that matter. And it's a team that it'll just be kind of interesting to see kind of how they've learned from kind of where the season went south last year, because they did start off really well. They began district 6-2, and they along the way they beat several teams that wound up going on to the playoffs. They swept Denton Geyer. They throughout the year they took wins off Allen and Plano Senior, but they only finished the year 2-4, including a 4-game losing streak. So a tough year for a team that might have been a little, low on big time, varsity experience. That that can be expected. That's kind of one of the telltale signs, especially in a competitive district, is being able to maintain quality play throughout the entirety of the district schedule and not just for a couple weeks here and there. Right. It'll just be interesting to see how Boyd volleyball bounces back, just given the benchmarks and just the tradition that were established under Kelly Arbabi, and just how they fare in Coach Castillo's second year. Let's see. That's about it, guys. That's a look at 8 teams that are, I guess, fit whatever just are intriguing to us. Teams that are, some of the more intriguing teams on the radar for District 9-6A next season. So
I think more intriguing is the right word, because there were probably at least 3 or 4 more. It's a district full of intrigue, for sure.
For sure, yeah. For the sake of this exercise, we had to each limit it to 2 apiece.
I could have picked 8 easily.
Right.
So that is it for this edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. We'll be back on Thursday with another questions-based edition of the podcast as we continue to pull entries from our summer question series. Taylor, Brian, appreciate y'all for tagging along. Folks, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the holiday. Enjoy your 4th of July. And hey, we will talk to y'all later.